This video is proudly sponsored by NewType. Tools, accessories, model kits, these guys have it. Hop over to newtypehq.com and use the link below to help this channel out for future builds. On February, I turned 41, and in that time, I finally fulfilled one of my childhood goals of building my all-time favorite Federation starship, the USS ENTERPRISE refit. And it really got me thinking, what else starships can I build for this YouTube channel that can be just as challenging? The USS Excelsior, Romulan Warbird, or hell, why not the Klingon Bird of Prey? Oh no. Please join me on a journey of me experiencing my childhood once again, of building probably one of my second and all-time favorite starships, the USS ENTERPRISE D. Why? Because it was one of the first and possibly many TV shows that I watched a lot as a kid, and most importantly, it gives me an excuse to share something with my son when he gets older to watch this video. Hello and welcome back, my dudes and dudettes, to another unique build from your boy Otaku Builder. And if this is your very first time onto this YouTube channel, welcome. So it has been a while since I've made any content on this channel, and I do apologize for that. I have just been completely overwhelmed with a lot of things in my personal life, so I'll get into that later on in the video. But the key reason why I wanted to try something different this time around was because, you know, I wanted to take a small break from making Gundam content. Yes, I got my hands on the beautiful Strike Freedom Gundam Master Grade EX Extreme. I will eventually build that in the future videos, but I wanted to really celebrate this momentous occasion of the success of Star Trek Picard Season 3 of building my all-time favorite starship, the USS ENTERPRISE D. Now, there are many reasons why I wanted to build this starship. For starters, I knew it was going to take me 3.5 months to build it, but I didn't know it was going to bleed into month 4 towards the beginning part of this build, because I knew for a fact that the saucer section would take longer than it would expected, but I didn't know it was going to be such a complex model kit. So let's talk about what we're going to get for the actual box art. We get a nice, beautiful representation of the Enterprise D, looking absolutely amazing when it detaches itself from the saucer section to the secondary hull. And then if the Enterprise D is not your thing, there are other amazing Enterprises, other starships that are in the lineage of Round 2's library currently right now. But if you want a challenge, this kit is definitely the one, because this unique mold has a clear design. Now, what exactly does that mean? It's actually really simple. All you need to do is proper painting, proper light blocking, have some kind of experience with L.E.D lighting, and guess what? No drilling is required. That's right, you don't need to drill out every single individual window, because the clear plastic does all the work for you, which is great. Now, the one thing I really need to touch on is I don't think the company AMT manufactures this model kit anymore. I think they just license the Enterprise D, which is a shame because I grew up with this company a lot as a kid. But when you open up this box art, you are going to be shocked. I mean, literally shocked on how clean and how crisp these clear pieces are, because I had no idea what I was getting myself into, because the last time I touched this model kit was like literally when I was 12 years old, and my father built it for me. Sure, he was working with the Enterprise D model kit that dealt with fiber optics, but this is going to be a next level of really working with something that is really unique, because this is what the prop department worked with back in the day when they actually built the Enterprise D. All the little divots, all the little scribing lines, all the little windows you see here, all beautifully captured on this beautiful mold. Now, there are some areas that are going to need to be sanded down, some areas are going to need to be scraped off due to the molding process, but that's going to be easily done. And it's definitely captured that with the very underneath part of the saucer section as well. But I don't want to lose all that detail. I want to try to retain as much as I can, because it's actually really beautiful, and I would hate to lose all that beautiful detail. Now, let's talk about the process on what's going to be done. Essentially, I'm going to be tackling the saucer section first. Now, once again, I know this is going to take about 3 to 4 months, but I want to put all the energy into making it look as accurate as possible. But what else do you get in this box art? You get the secondary hull, you get the nice saucer section, detached section, which I believe leads to the battle bridge, and then you get the back portion of the Enterprise, which a lot of people in the community have stated that is inaccurate, especially around the impulse engine. It's not supposed to be that low. It's supposed to be like, you know, a couple centimeters higher. So I'm gonna be looking for a replacement piece like that in a couple months so they can get it looking great. But other than that, this area in particular is going to require a great deal of modifications. As for the secondary hull, this is really uniquely designed, but I actually had some issues when I took it out of the box. Believe it or not, it actually cracked. So it goes to show that how fragile these pieces are when you take out the box art. They are very delicate. And you know what's just as delicate as this model kit? The price. So when I work on this project, I need to make sure I have all the references I have so that way I can do this in one shot, because I cannot risk buying another version of this model kit because they don't mass produce them anymore. Now what's also really unique of this model kit is the warp nacelles. These are bulky, but they are beautifully sculpted, but they're going to require some modifications around the tip of the Bazaar collectors later on in, I guess you could say, in the future build, especially around the back part and right in the front. You get a nice tight shot of the main deflector dish, more nicely sculpted pieces for the warp nacelles, and last thing, we have the impulse engine sitting in the back in the saucer section and 2 pieces for the Bazaar collectors. Now that pretty much wraps everything up, but the next unique thing about this model kit is probably the most expensive part of this model kit, and that is going to be the water slide decals. Now these decals are essentially the Aztec patterns. This requires no painting, this requires no planning. All you need to do is cut these pieces out and place it onto the designated area. And it's a lot. I mean, when I looked at this at first, I literally told myself, I want to do this by hand, okay? Why don't I just do all the hard work for me and have this already be done? You know what, that kind of defeats the challenge, and that's the reason why I want to do it that way. Now when it comes to the instruction manual, it makes it very, very clear that you are essentially working with clear pieces. They are delicate, fragile, and very hard to come by, so when you work this model kit, make sure you do diligence and take your time when working with these pieces. Because like I said before, this model kit is extremely rare and very difficult to find at the present time of making this video. So let's talk about what we can expect for this unique model kit. You get the saucer section, which is going to be relatively simple to construct. You get the secondary hull that actually connects to the lower neck, to the main body, to the warp nacelles, and the actually construction process is very simple and it's very well planned out for this instruction manual. So all you need to make sure is you have everything put together, have a good deal of super glue, and a great deal of patience, because that's going to be very apparent when you put on the water slide decals, because there is a lot to apply on this unique model kit. So without further ado, that pretty much wraps up this experience for this model kit. It's going to take me 3 to 4.5 months, probably creep into 4, but you know what? When I make this content on this channel, I always like to challenge myself and push myself to the next limit. So before I get started removing these distracting circular pieces that sit underneath the saucer section, I want to remove the access mold that's been sitting on top of the saucer section. So I'm just going to use a regular razor blade to scrape off the access residue that's on there. As you can see, it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but when you take the blade back and really observe it, you actually get a great deal of excess plastic. So this process is going to take roughly about 30 to 45 minutes. And again, I'm not applying a great deal of pressure on the surface. I'm just trying to wipe off as much as the excess plastic as best I can. Then, once I get that done, I'm going to gently start sanding off those areas just with a little bit of sandpaper to make the area a little bit more smoother. Once again, I want to retain as much of that surface detail from the top and bottom of the saucer section to make it look really cool. Okay, so I got the hardest part done. Now it's time to get rid of those pesky bumps that sit in the very underneath part of the saucer section. Now with this, I'm going to use a unique tool that I'll be using in my future video of the Enterprise build. And this one's going to be called, I believe, the A-Torque. This is going to be essentially used to remove those pesky pieces without me actually having to scrape it out with a razor blade. Okay, that's looking better than I expected. So before I apply the actual primer on top and bottom, I need to mask out the actual windows. So before I do it, I'm going to be marking the designated windows with a Gundam marker. And then when I get the ones that I want, then I'll be applying a Tamiya masking tape on those designated windows, so that way I don't create any kind of issues when painting these guys. took 4 grueling hours, but you know what? It was time well invested. Now I can finally get these guys to be painted properly. Now before I do that, I need to get this prepped up and letting you guys know how I'm going to do this process. So for starters, these pieces of the windows are going to be completely blanketed out by the primer, but that's not going to be an issue when it's done. When everything is said and done and painted, you'll be able to scrape these windows out very easily, because the wonderful thing how these molds are designed is very easy to actually scrape these windows out, either with a fine piece of a tweezer or actual flathead screwdriver. Whatever your preference is, it's going to be very easy to scrape off that excess paint, and that's going to be very apparent when you're actually doing the Enterprise bridge. But the windows on the Enterprise bridge are drastically smaller, so when you actually do like the paint scraping of the windows, you're going to actually need to take your time. But before we do that, we need to make sure we drill in a small little hole in back of the bridge, which is going to essentially be the navigational strobe light that's going to be there in back of this section. So all the navigational light drilling is finally complete, but there's actually one little small little detail that is definitely going to be luring a lot of hardcore Star Trek purists, and that's going to be the captain's quarters or the captain's yacht. I'm going to be doing that off screen because I know there's a lot of people are going to be questioning that part, but you can add or remove that if you want to. So after working 3 grueling hours to make this guy look absolutely amazing, the primer is going to sit and lock into place within the next 8 hours overnight, and then once it's done, you're going to get a nice soft smooth surface. Now once that's done, I'm going to be hitting the under part of the saucer section with a nice reflective paint. Now what this reflective paint is going to essentially do is going to create a nice light refracting effect. Now what do I mean by that is, the refracting effect is essentially going to distribute the whole entire light around the saucer section evenly without actually requiring using too many L.E.D lights. So any window that is actually going to be exposed, it's going to brighten it up beautifully. Now next comes the next challenging part, and that's going to be the photo etching pieces. And thanks to the good folks from Green Strawberry, they have an amazing library of photo etching pieces for the Enterprise D. Everything down to the phaser array, deflector disc, even the Bazaar collector's lighting, positioning, they have it all done for you. And their instruction manual makes it that much easier to follow because they actually have done all the hard work for you. All you need to do is just follow it to the T and you're good to go. Now the one area that I'm going to be focusing a lot of the energy with the photo etching pieces is going to be the phaser array for this build. Alright, the photo pieces are done. It's now time to get started. Okay, so where do I begin? So, first and foremost, what's going on, guys? It's been a long time. 3 months is a long time not developing any content on YouTube, but hey, family comes first. So, why exactly am I pausing this video? Well, there's 3 key reasons. One, I completely screwed up the painting process. I went to going the whole process of doing with traditional paint methods with using lacquer-based paint. I thought I had the paint thinning ratio done correctly. It was wrong. And within 2 to 3 days after the application was done drying onto the saucer section, it began to bubble and it began to crumble. Now, I thought at first it had something to do with the weather because it was getting really cold at some points in California and it was getting really warm. The answer to that is it's both, but the key reason why it started happening was because I didn't properly prep the pieces. When these model kits come out of the factory, they have a little bit of resin, like a little bit of like a Vaseline, like an oil substance that's on them because they're going through that big printing process of being mass produced. I didn't take in consideration that this model kit that's literally close to 10 years old still had some of it on there. So you'll see in these brief clips that I had to completely sand down the surface all the way down to the main plastic, and then in sanding it down, completely scrapping the original paint color scheme on it and going with something completely different. At the very end, it worked out great, but my original color scheme for the Enterprise D didn't come out the way how I wanted at first, but towards the end, it started to improve. But full disclaimer on that, in the future when it comes to other builds, just clean the pieces, whether you're using a good deal of water with a little bit of denature alcohol or just using classic dishwashing liquid. Just use the stuff, clean these pieces, and make sure you don't have as big as a headache as I did. Other than that, please enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next build. Much appreciated, future me. As you can see here, the piece has been already primed and now it's ready to get to the next step. But before we do that, we need to remove the actual masking tapes that have been protecting the windows this whole entire time. This process takes like roughly around 30 to 45 minutes, so just take your time. Okay, so I completely forgot to mention this earlier in the video, so I'll try my best to explain it right now. So, we obviously know that this model kit comes with its own Aztec patterns, but for those that want to push themselves a little harder, there is a wonderful company by the name of Motion Picture Miniatures that has done all the extensive detail that you can possibly think of when it comes to Aztec patterns. Now, what exactly do I mean? This man solely did all the research, everything down to the accurate color, the positioning of the Aztec patterns, big, small, wide, sharp angles. He's done all that hard work for you by painstakingly watching the movies and TV shows back to back to give you a more accurate presentation on how these actual Aztec pieces look. And all you need to do is just follow the decals instructions. Now, what you can see here, you actually have the transfer sheet that actually has the designated Aztec pattern on there, and then all you need to do is apply it onto this transfer sheet. Sounds pretty complex, right? Well, rest assured, this man actually has a very well video tutorial onto his YouTube channel, and I'll do my best to leave an adaptation for you guys to go check it out because this guy deserves all the attention. When it comes to picking the right one, get the complete set. It's actually pretty expensive, but it's definitely worth the purchase. Now, when it comes to the windows for the Enterprise D, some areas are actually light blue, some areas are a little bit white, some a little bit hue yellow. I'm gonna be actually selecting specific windows with a nice, to me, a clear blue to make them really pop out. Okay, so we finally reached stage 2 when it comes to the Aztec patterns. Now the instructions do say that for this particular pattern you're going to be using a designated white piece. I feel that the white is a tad too bold, so I want to use something a little bit more softer between like a very light gray to a grayish white. So I'll be using Mr. Hobby's 315 color for this particular pattern because it gets the right kind of color accuracy that I wanted. And after that, it just comes down to just taking your time and patiently apply the Aztecs. Alright, we finally hit stage 3, and this is actually probably the easiest part, but at the same time, very stressful. So we got the actual nice soft blues, we have a little bit soft grayish whites, and now we need to add another blue onto the surface. Now this blue itself should not be very bright, even though it's actually asking to be a lighter blue. But once again, I'm going to be doing a color mixture between making the actual blue just a tad more lighter in between more of a grayish blue instead of an actual light blue. And the wonderful thing is, I actually got a good deal of the actual whole color for the Enterprise to make this balance work. So I'll be using a little bit of half and half because as you look here from the reference here, the actual Aztec patterns isn't really bold. It's just actually supposed to be there to really represent the actual artistic style and how the saucer section looks. So I definitely want to make sure it looks really good as possible. So once this is done, I'm going to get started applying this next and final stage of the Aztec patterns. Oh my goodness, my dudes, this is looking absolutely amazing. Now comes the next challenging part. The next thing I need to do here, now hear me out here, I need to slightly desaturate the saucer section just a little. Now the reason for that is I don't want all these pieces to be really blown out like you would see from the actual original Aztec decals that come with this model kit. I want it to blend perfectly with the actual original colors. So to do this, I'm not going to be using the aerosol can, I'll be actually using the actual lacquer-based paint that I purchased separately from another website. All right, as you can see here, the paint application looks absolutely amazing. And as you can see here, I've already taken the liberty of doing some practice when it comes to scraping out the windows. Now, when it comes to the windows, I am not going to be using an X-Acto like a lot of builders tend to use. Shockingly enough, I'm going to be using a flathead Phillips head screwdriver. Now, this is something that I had lying around with my, I guess you can say, your starter kit that you get from building Gundam model kits. So this is going to be a great substitute to gently scrape out each individual window. Now, when I mean every window, I mean every single window. Okay, we are literally at the home run stretch here, and I want to take some free time to work on the phase array because this part is a bit tricky. There's some references that shows that it's a light gray, others say it's a darker gray, some it's like between a military green. I just went with what worked great for my color scheme, and I think a nice dark gray works. Now when it comes to LED installation, I've already taken the liberty of completely working on the top section. So we got one that is going to be a navigation green, white, and then a red in the corner. You have two additional navigation lights that are going to be chip LED lights, and then two chip blues that are in the back, and then one for the bridge later on. Now I'll be taking the time to focus all my energy on the secondary area, the bridge. Now the bridge itself is going to require very little minimum touch. I've already installed a chip LED light that's going to be designated connected to a circuit called a strobe light, which will have an external wire that'll be connected to the actual warp nacelles later on in a future video. Now as for the actual main bridge itself, I'll be powering it up with the actual mega LED light to light up all those individual small windows. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is going to be the strobe circuit. I'm going to actually have it split off into two sections. One's going to be designated for the bridge, and then I'll actually have an external wire that's going to connect to the actual warp nacelles, and then actually one connected to the very bottom of the actual secondary hull. Once again, that'll be in a future video. Okay, last but not least is going to be the mega LED lights. I'm going to have a light array in the mid center, and then actually another ring around the outside of the outer rim of the actual saucer section, so that way the lights can face upward to light up the actual top section of the saucer section and then light down the very bottom. Now remember when I said earlier in the video that it's going to be requiring a lot of light refraction? That's when the metallic paint comes into play with the top section of the saucer section. So minimum LED lights that are going to be required, and all that light distribution is going to be done evenly and correctly. You know, when I set out on this adventure to work on another starship, I had no idea it was going to literally take me 3 months just to get one section done. And compared to building the Enterprise refit, a lot has happened in my life where I just don't have a lot of that free time like I used to anymore. And before anyone else starts throwing stones and grabbing your pitchforks and starting to charge towards me, I am not complaining one bit. I'm a proud father. It is a blessing to experience fatherhood, and for anyone that has never experienced it, I hope you do in your lifetime. It's really interesting how my time working full-time in a factory and then having very little time to spend with my son, and then having just as much very little time to work on these model kits, it's really brought a big perspective in my life that time is extremely precious, and that's something I'm going to touch in the next video. But when I get the opportunity to work on these projects, it's literally only 1 day out of the week compared to me doing it like 4 days a week, 8 hours every day. It's now relegated to just 1 day a week, only 4 hours that day. And I got to make sure every time I work on this project is precious, because working on the Enterprise D is a very important project to me. And the reason why it's important is because it was my very first Star Trek show that literally got me into watching a syndicated Star Trek TV show. And I love Star Trek The Next Generation. It was rough the first season, but after the second and third and fourth season, that's where things started to get really picked up. And that's where it really piqued my interest. I really liking Star Trek a lot as a kid. But I think it was the first time in life where I actually started to feel bad for a character that isn't really real. And what do I mean by that is, I guess you can say I started to feel empathy for something that is real to me, but I know in reality it's not. And for some reason, it happened a lot to me for like sci-fi films. I mean, I can name a few of them. To the Enterprise refit, sacrificing itself to give the Enterprise crew a fighting chance to live, to the Thunder Road from the movie Explorers, and even Alex Murphy from RoboCop getting gunned down by those villains. Right? It's really interesting. And then you have the Enterprise D that crashed and was abandoned on Viridian 3. And I knew as a kid that there was no way they were going to abandon that, because that kind of defeats the laws of the Prime Directive in Star Trek. I knew that it was going to come back in some shape or form. Whether it was going to be a relic or it was going to be put in some kind of museum, I knew it was going to come back. And guess what? It did. Took 30 years, but hey, I'm 41 and I'm still kicking, right? But it's a wonderful feeling that at my skill level, I can actually build and paint and put all the bells and whistles like these men and women did back in the props back in the old days, and I love it. If you guys haven't gotten the opportunity, watch season 3 of Star Trek Picard. It is amazing, because it's a testament of how one director, a producer, a writer can show how much love and attention to detail really goes into writing a show. We got burned pretty bad with Star Wars, and we're still getting burned bad with Star Wars. I mean, but Star Trek is getting back on its feet, and I think it's our duty as fans to really support it. Now, I know when I went into working on this project that I was going to lose subscribers, and I know that there aren't going to be a lot of people that are going to watch this video, but my dudes, give me 2 more months. I am really enjoying this project, and I hope you guys can continue joining me on this journey. As always, thank you dudes and dudettes for watching this video, and I'll see you dudes and dudettes on the next build.